I remember my girlfriend ends up laying down on the bed and she said to me, Baba, get me pregnant, or honestly, we should just break up. And at that moment, I didn't know what to do. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to a really insane story. So this story all takes place back in my high school years, and this was my grade 12 year. So the year that I was graduating. Now, in your grade 12 year, one thing I will say is that usually that's the year when you're supposed to figure out life. The part of life where basically you are needing to know what is your career going to be and how are you going to basically satisfy yourself in the future. Obviously, thanks to you guys, by the way, I managed to become a YouTuber, which, I mean, if you guys press that like button, it would mean a lot. But one thing's for sure, before I became a YouTuber, I really did not know what I was gonna do, and the only thing I was good at was doing the Devil's Tango. And in my grade 12 year, I remember there was one girl that I was always doing the Devil's Tango with, to the point where I'm not gonna lie, she seemed like my girlfriend. The reason I say this was because she would always go out with me, and we'd always go to like dinners and stuff, and I would basically always drive her around, and honestly, the whole school thought of us as a couple, so we ended up kind of just becoming one. But one thing was for sure, every time me and this girl would have a conversation about the future, about where we see ourselves in the next 5 years, none of us would have an answer. Except one thing was for sure, in this girl's mind, she knew that she wanted to be a mother. Now, one thing's for sure, me in grade 12, I was only 19, so I could not see myself being a parent at all. Like, nor did I ever want to be. But this girl, she was so firm on it, and me and her, every time after we would do the Devil's Tango, she would always bring up in conversation. As for me, well, I would always try to ignore this conversation and, you know, move on to talk about different things, but she would always end up saying, Baba, you do realize, like, you have to, like, eventually make kids because, like, your family legacy. I don't know. She made it seem like this was something like Game of Thrones kind of thing where I needed a new heir of, like, being the god of Devil's Tango. But honestly, one thing I will say was that I really did not care at all about kids at this time. The only thing I cared about was where I was going to be in the next 5 years. Going on with the story, I remember the next day, I actually ended up going to school, and basically when I went to school, I ended up seeing a bunch of my friends that were just sitting in the cafeteria, and me and all the guys would sit in the corner where most people wouldn't annoy us or bug us, and we could have crazy conversations. And I remember when I went and sat with them, they were all talking about, you know, what university they were going to and stuff, and me, I never really had an answer because I didn't go to university nor college. I didn't really know what I wanted to do or what I wanted to be. And then I remember one of my friends in my friend group ended up looking at me saying, oh, Bubba, did you know actually my girlfriend's actually going to be in the same college as me? Dude, we're going to go through college together, and honestly, I cannot wait to marry her. At that moment, I remember when he said that, I didn't really know what to say back, and then he ended up saying afterwards, wait, Bubba, I'm just wondering, what's your girlfriend's plan? Are you guys planning to like stay together after high school? And me, I never really had an answer, except the only thing I could say was, well, if I'm being honest, the only thing my girlfriend cares about right now is getting pregnant. Like, she just wants a kid, bro, so badly. I remember they all ended up looking at me as if I was crazy for bringing that up, but at the same time, this was nothing outlandish that we haven't heard before as the boys. And they ended up looking at me, and one of them ended up saying, yo, bro, just be careful, man, because if she's like gets desperate, bro, like she would go to extreme lengths just to make sure you finish inside. Wait, what do you mean? Is what I asked him afterwards. And they ended up telling me a story about how a girl got secretly pregnant. I don't know. It was one of the most insane stories, I gotta say, and maybe I'll tell it one day on the channel, but it wouldn't be my own story, so I don't know why I would say it on the channel. But one thing was for sure, this kind of scared me, because was it really a thing to get baby trapped? Was it normal for girls to trap people into getting themselves pregnant and staying with the person forever? Well, let's just say yes, because what ends up happening next, I gotta say, was extreme. I remember the next day, I ended up getting a message from my girlfriend at the time, and she texted me saying, hey, Bubba, I'm just curious. I got a job at a daycare. Do you want to come with me and drop me off on the first day? And I ended up texting her back, sure, because obviously, you know, her getting a job was a good step for, you know, the future. And basically, I remember that day, I ended up going to go pick her up from her home, and I ended up driving her to the daycare that she started working at. When I got there, I remember she ended up telling me to come out of the car with her, and we both ended up going into her new workplace. And when I looked around, I saw a ton of kids. Now, me, I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't hate kids. I think kids are awesome, and to be honest, as an uncle myself, I love kids. But one thing was for sure was that it was super weird how a lot of these kids, when I walked into the room, they all started looking at me and my girlfriend, and one of them even ended up walking up to me and basically grabbing my leg. Now, obviously, I was a little annoyed, and I ended up basically grabbing him and picking him up and holding him, and basically he ended up talking to me saying random gibberish that I could not understand. At this moment, I remember my girlfriend was looking at me with her eyes wide open, and she was almost tearing up. I don't know why she was, but she just kept staring at me with this crazy eye that she had, and on top of that, she ended up smiling as if she had a diabolical plan in place. And at that moment, I didn't know what it was. I remember after a while, I ended up leaving, and I ended up driving in my car and heading back home. But as I got home, I remember 2 hours went by, and she ended up texting me saying, hey, is it cool if you pick me up like later on? Yeah, sure, I can pick pick you up. Okay, cool. Pick me up at this time. I'll see you at the daycare. And one thing led to another. I remember as hours went by, I ended up getting ready, getting in my car, and I drove down to her. And when I got to the daycare, I remember I ended up seeing her standing by the door holding someone's kid, and I ended up walking up to her saying, hey, like, you ready to go into the car? Yeah, I'm just waiting for one more parent. Honestly, isn't he so cute, Bubba? Yeah, he's cute. But where's the parent for this kid? Oh, she'll be here any minute. But honestly, Bubba, like, this got me thinking, we should really, like, you know, have a kid. Like, I'm sure you'll figure things out, and I'm sure we're gonna be okay. But honestly, a kid would really make us closer together. At that moment, I didn't know what this girl was saying, and I basically looked at her saying, you do realize we're both only 19. Like, we have a lot of future ahead of us, is what I told her. And she wasn't listening to any of it. She just kept looking at this child that she was holding and basically ignoring everything I would say. I remember one thing leads to another. The parent ends up coming to pick up their kid, and me and her, we ended up seeing in the car, and we started basically heading back to her place. When we got to her place, I remember she invited me inside saying, hey, do you want to like come in for a bit? Like, I've been missing you a lot. Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll come in, is what I told her. And I ended up basically going inside her house, and when me and her got inside, we went straight to her bedroom, and basically I ended up sitting on her bed, and she looked at me saying, Bubba, do you want to like maybe make a kid? Like, try it and see if it happens, if fate lets us have it. At that moment, I looked at her and I said, no, bro, because I'm not doing the devil's tango with you to have a child. I'm doing it just for the fun of it. And I remember when I said no, she got really upset, and she just was really annoyed with me because she just kept thinking about having a kid. And honestly, her working at a daycare did not make things any better. I remember afterwards, things got really awkward between me and her, and we just ended up sitting in her room in silence until I want to say 10 minutes went by, and she got up and she ended up going to the bathroom, and she was only in the bathroom for like 3 minutes. But when she came out, she ended up walking up to me saying, Bubba, I want to do the devil's tango. Not if you're gonna try to make you get pregnant. No, it's okay. Trust me, you could just use this. And she ended up pulling out a rubber, and that's when I knew, okay, so we're just doing it for fun. But I found it really odd how 1 minute she wants a kid, and the next minute she's pulling a rubber out. Like, nothing made sense to me, and what made her change her mind so quickly? So that's when I ended up basically looking at the rubber that she handed me, and I went to the bathroom with it, and I put it under the sink, and I turned on the water, and I saw that it had holes in it. This girl was going to try to baby trap me. At that moment, I remember I walked up to her and said, you do realize this has holes in it, right? But oh my goodness, does it really matter? Like, can we just at least like try it once? No, we're not going to. What are you doing? Like, you really trying to baby trap me right now? Is what I told her. And she ended up telling me the words that I never thought would come out of a girl's mouth. But she said, Bubba, either you get me pregnant or we're done. You understand me? At that moment, I knew what I had to do. I ended up basically getting my backpack, and I left her house so quickly, and I drove straight home because God knows that I am not going to get someone pregnant at the age of 19. Like, no way, Jose. I was not ready for a kid whatsoever. But if you guys don't want to get baby trapped like I was about to be, then fall for more embarrassing stories. Okay, so today's story is honestly insane. And before anything, like I always say, leave a like, subscribe, follow for more. And on top of that, I am live on Twitch as we speak. So after this video, go right over to Twitch, search up Bubba_streams, and just watch me live. But other than that, let's get straight into this crazy story. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to an insane story. So yes, I know what the title looks like, and no, it's not exact. Well, I mean, it is exact, technically speaking, because she was pregnant, but the way this ended up happening was insane. You see, back when I was in high school, there was a nursery program. And in the nursery program, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know anyone in there, because hell, I don't know any pregnant chicks. That's just the science of it. But I remember one time, I was in my social studies class, and I was just kind of sitting down doing my own thing. And over the year, I remember there was this one girl that always came to that socials class, and she was like, I'm not gonna lie, pretty attractive. But the one thing about her was that she always had a boyfriend. Now, usually there's one of many things I do when a girl has a boyfriend. One, I say, screw it, it's a 1v1 situation. That's my Call of Duty in me speaking. Or I just straight up just ignore her flat out and just say she's taken, put an army helmet on her head, and send her off. Simple as that. But then I started realizing that one thing led to another, and she'd stopped coming to school. Now, I didn't know what was going on with this girl. She looked good. Everything was fine with her life. At least that's what I think. But something just seemed off. I remember after a while, I ended up finding her Instagram, and I saw that her and her boyfriend weren't really talking anymore, apparently. And usually the way you would indicate these things is that nowadays in this generation, if you have like a letter in your bio, or you have like photos of like you and your loved one like together as like a cute couple, usually they're taken. But once those photos are archived and, you know, the letters are gone, it usually means free to play. So that's what ended up happening. I remember one day at school, I ended up just walking down the hallway, and I saw her in my hallway. After not seeing her in class for like the last couple months, I'm like, oh, you're here. And I walked up to her, I'm like, hey, like, you coming to class today? She's like, what do you mean? I always go to class. And I told her, oh no, like I haven't been seeing you in class at all. And she's like, oh, like I'm in the nursery program. I looked at her in like kind of a weird face, and she recognized that, and she's like, what? And I'm like, oh, are you like, she looked at me with like wide eyes open, kind of freaking out, saying, no, I'm not pregnant. Because usually like that's where pregnant chicks would go, the nursery program, like I said earlier. And I'm like, oh, so like, why are you there then? And at this moment, honestly, I don't know why she like started like somewhat looking like she was sweating and looked like she had to go piss. But she basically said, oh, like, I'm just there to help out my friend daily, just help her with schoolwork. Kind of odd, you know, when a girl usually like, you know, starts kind of talking in a weird voice and a tone where it sounds like she's lying, 90% of the time, she is lying. So I remember I told her afterwards, I'm like, listen, if you don't want to say anything, just don't say it. And I kind of just walked away from her. Afterwards, I remember she looked at me as I was walking away and ran up to me saying, oh, like, actually, like, can I just get your snap? I ended up getting her Snapchat, and me knowing that she asked for my Snapchat, that usually meant that she was actually single. I didn't want to ask about a previous boyfriend, by the way, because, well, that's kind of like the last thing any guy should do with any girl. Ask about the previous exes. It's not like a code that you usually do in like a date you go on. I don't know. Me, I just never spoke about him in general. Thankfully, it wasn't in the story yet. I remember later on throughout the day, I ended up going to my socials class and she wasn't there, and I knew the reason why at this point. But I remember my teacher walked up to me saying, excuse me, Bubba, I was hoping you could drop this off to the girl in the nursery class. When he handed me the paper, I looked at the piece of paper and it was actually a file with the girl that I originally was talking to in the hallway's name. The girl in the nursing program or nursery. Nursing programs, it makes her sound like she was a doctor. She is the furthest thing from a doctor. I would not trust her with my body, nor testicle. Anyways, going on. I remember I ended up walking down the hallway and I started looking at the piece of paper. I didn't open the file because, hell, it's none of my business and it just looked like a bunch of schoolwork that she did previously. But I remember as I walked in the nursery, I ended up seeing a bunch of babies. When I was looking at these kids, honestly, it made me realize that there's a lot of kids getting, you know, teenage pregnant nowadays. And in my opinion, guys, either learn how to pull out or wear a rubber, guys. Like, seriously. But I remember I walked in there and I handed the piece of paper to the teacher, and then I saw the girl that I was talking to originally. She looked at me and she kind of like looked at me in a shock, but she didn't have a baby with her. I ended up walking up to her saying, oh, like, are you just helping your friend? Because I saw she was sitting beside someone. And then she said, oh yeah, like, I'm just helping her out with stuff. I remember I ended up looking at her friend, and her friend kind of looked like confused of why I was there in the first place. So I remember looking at her saying, oh, okay, well, I'm just gonna like head out. Nice seeing you. And I walked out. And you guys are probably wondering, where in the world did I end up interacting with this girl? Well, you see, that same night, I remember going home when I was playing Call of Duty with the boys. I know I say that a lot in these stories, saying I played Call of Duty with the boys, but I did. Playing Call of Duty with the boys was like the iconic thing I always did back when I was in high school. But going on with the story, I remember I was kind of just sitting there playing Call of Duty, and I remember as I was playing, I ended up getting a Snapchat. And this Snapchat was from the girl in the nursery that, you know, interacted with me. I remember we were snapping like all night, basically talking about life, school, and I did end up finding about her boyfriend and what happened and stuff, but she didn't tell me the full thing. But to be honest, I didn't care enough. And then one thing led to another, and we decided to hang out one day. I remember the next day at school, I ended up seeing her in the hallway here and there, and we ended up kind of talking more and more. But there was one thing about her that I never understood, and that she was gaining weight, and she was gaining weight fast. Honestly, I don't know, as months went by, I realized that her stomach started building up, and me, I thought she was just getting fat. I'm gonna be honest, like, I was like, oh, okay, she's probably like, you know, not caring about her weight, because she told me she dropped out of dance classes and stuff for personal reasons, but nothing ever stuck to my mind that she could have been pregnant. Now, I know you guys are thinking, oh my goodness, no way. And honestly, let me explain how shocked I was. I remember one time as me and her were hanging out, and we were just in the theater chilling. We went to the theaters, you know, we kind of got close, and yes, we did end up making out with the theaters, but then she felt nauseous, she went and puked, and I thought it was my bad breath, I'm gonna be honest, because popcorn breath isn't fun. But then, for some reason, and out of nowhere, as we went back to my place, and we ended up going to my room, and me and her were planning to do the Devil's Tango. We started doing it, and then halfway through it, she told me, oh my goodness, I think my baby can feel it. What? I remember I pulled out instantly, and I just like looked at her, I'm like, what did you say? She looked at me all confused, and she's like, what? And I looked at her, I'm like, you said your baby can feel it. What is your baby saying? I looked at her, and we both looked like confused at each other, and she's like, oh, it was just roleplay, it was just roleplay. And I looked at her, I'm like, no, it's not roleplay, something's not adding up here. She ends up looking at me saying, okay, just sit down. I sat down with her, and she told me, I'm pregnant. What? You're telling me this whole time you were just pregnant and you didn't tell me that? Now I know you guys are thinking, oh, but you saw her stomach get bigger. Are you like that dumb? Guys, you guys gotta understand, this was high school. Getting a chick pregnant was like the last thing I could ever think of. But she looked at me and she's like, yeah, like, sorry, I didn't know how to break the news to you. Like, it was just really like awkward, and you know, I didn't want to bring up my ex and how everything happened, which was good on her. Like, I mean, that's personal stuff and I get it, but it would be nice to know if you were pregnant. Like, it just makes sense. I don't know. I just felt really weirded out, and I remember I told her to just kind of like, you know, get your things together and I'll drive you back home, because I didn't want her walking in the dark home when she was pregnant. I don't know. In a way, I felt like a security for her, but at the same time, I was kind of disgusted. Not that she was like pregnant, just the fact that she didn't tell me. I don't mind if she was pregnant, because teen pregnancies, I guess, are now very common nowadays. But other than that, I remember I drove her home, and she told me, like, you know, she apologized and everything, and I said it's fine, and we ended up moving on. The next day at school, I remember we were just walking around, and I remember I saw this guy that I'd never seen in my school before. before. And this guy straight up just somehow recognized me and walked up to me. He walked up to me saying, yo, bro, like, I heard you slept with my girl, bro. I just want to say, like, I'm sorry. Cause like, she told me about the situation because we still talk sometimes. Like, dude, like, honestly, bro, like, I wish I knew that she was going after you so I could tell you that she was my baby mama. What? This guy seemed totally chill that totally just did the devil's tango with his girlfriend, but you know, who cares? And yeah, that's basically it for the story. Honestly, it was pretty awkward, and to this day, I still didn't understand anything. But at the same time, like I always say, fall for more embarrassing stories. Okay, so for all the girls watching, I just want to let you know, if you're in any way in middle school or high school, please, and I mean please, stay away from guys that want to get you pregnant. Because I'm not gonna lie, there's some weirdos out there that would love to get a kid, and I'm telling you one thing, bringing a kid into this generation or world is honestly the last thing I want to do. But today's story is the most insane story ever, and honestly, I gotta say this, it's gonna be a wild one. So, my opinion, sit back, relax, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because seriously, over 67% of you guys aren't subscribed to the channel, which is absolutely just goofy. So just subscribe, and let's get straight into this crazy story. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. So today's video is I'm pregnant. Now, I'm not actually pregnant. I just want to let you guys know, nor have I ever had a kid, but me having a lot of, well, devil's tango could always lead to having a kid. And for all the people that are like, oh, like, what do you mean, Bubba? Just use like protection. You'll never get a kid. Yeah, I'm just gonna say this now. If you guys didn't know already, at least 13 out of 100 people get pregnant even if they use a literal protection rubber thingy. And I'll say this much, me in high school, I was a pretty bad boy, and I thought I had like 100% pullout game, so I never really actually paid attention to that. And I always kind of just did it raw dog style, if that makes any sense. I remember one time though, there was a girl back in high school that I was seeing a lot of the time, and in a way, me and her were like friends with benefits, but at the same time, like, we really wanted to like maybe conceal the lock and maybe actually become in a relationship. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I was never really good at relationships back in high school. I didn't see a point in it, because if you guys didn't see my video where I explained that dating in high school is dumb, well, that's what I thought in high school. I thought I was just dumb. A time in high school is to when to really like figure out what you want to do with your future and basically do the devil's tango with all the people that you will not probably see in your future. At least that's what I thought. But going on, I remember one time I ended up hanging out with this girl that was my friends with benefits, and me and her, we decided to go to her place. And when we were at her place, I remember me and her were just talking about basic stuff and really just talking about what the future could hold for us if we ever did get together. Like, I think most people that are like friends with like an opposite gender would basically have this conversation of like, hey, like, what if we like started dating, and basically lead to like what could happen to the future. And then I remember one thing led to another. Me and her, we started talking about having a kid. Now, as a joke, I remember I always used to say that I want my kid to be named Yoda. And yes, I would love for my kid to be named Yoda, because imagine like if he gets older and he's super cool, then he could be called Broda. Okay, that sounds weird, but you guys know what I mean. Like, I don't know, having a kid at such a young age and thinking about it in high school seems like a really cool future. Like, don't tell me that a lot of you guys haven't thought about growing up and having a kid and having a family and all this parental stuff. I don't know, now that I'm 21 and basically telling stories and making YouTube videos for a living, having a kid would be pretty terrifying. But I remember basically me and this girl, we were talking about it, and honestly, I remember she looked at me and said, honestly, like, do you want to like maybe like actually like have a kid? Wait, what is what I said? I was super confused that she literally just asked me to get her pregnant, and I didn't know what to say. So I decided to tell her like, no, like, I don't think it's a good idea, and that maybe me and her should maybe stop seeing each other. And you guys got to understand, like, when a friends with benefits wants to become more than, well, friends with benefits, it could lead to a lot of dangerous territory. So that's when I usually decide to close it off, because for some reason girls have a faster way of like connecting to others than guys do, I guess. I have no idea. But I remember basically she was like talking to me and stuff, maybe like talk me down and like say like, oh, like, no, it's fine, like, we can keep seeing each other, like, don't be nervous. But me, I decided that this would be the last time I saw her. So her knowing that, I remember she ended up going to the bathroom, and I have no idea what she did, but she was in there for a while. And then I remember she came out, and me, as I was going to my backpack to pull out a rubber, she looked at me and said, oh, like, we don't need that, like, don't worry about it. But then I told her, no, like, I'm gonna use a rubber, like, obviously. And if you guys don't know what I mean by a rubber, I mean like a condom. I just want to let you guys know, always use protection if you guys are gonna go do the devil's tango. But then I remember I looked at her and said, okay, I'm just gonna get one, like, come on, like, you gotta understand, I gotta use one. And then she said, oh, like, I have one for you. And then she pulled out one out of her pocket, like she had it there the whole time. I thought maybe she was like mentally preparing for me and stuff like that the whole time, and maybe she just knew that was gonna happen, so she wanted one to like pull out instantly as we're in the moment. So I remember I decided to put that one on, and me and her, we ended up doing the devil's tango. But as me and her were doing it, I remember after everything was over, I ended up going to the bathroom, and I ended up taking off the condom. When I did, I remember I looked down and I like was pulling like the thing off, and one thing I realized was that there was a hole in it. I remember I was freaking out and like thinking like, what? Like, how did I put a hole in this thing? Like, there's no way. Like, that's it. Like, she's gonna get pregnant. Like, I'm done for. So I remember I came out of the room, literally not wearing anything and saying, hey, yo, there's literally like a hole in this. She looked at me and like kind of giggled at first, but then kind of looked at me all serious saying, wait, are you serious? Oh my goodness. Like, there's no way there's actually a hole in it. Oh my goodness. Like, okay, we have to talk this through. So basically me and her had a conversation about what we should do. And I told her instantly, go get plan B. If you guys don't know what plan B is, it's basically a way to like make sure like a woman doesn't get pregnant, or at least helps out to like make sure a woman doesn't get pregnant. So that's what we did. I remember me and her, we got dressed, we went to my car, we drove to the nearest store, and basically I got her plan B. Afterwards, I remember I went back home, she took the pill, blah, 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 and one thing led to another. The next day ended up happening. I remember I ended up going to school, and the whole entire night I could not sleep because I won't lie to you, that shock and scare of getting someone pregnant is terrifying. And also the percentage rate of plan B actually working is 95%. Okay, so like you never know what's gonna happen, dude. Like that 5% of my little swimmers could be like, ooh, egg, we're gonna get an egg. Like you never know, dude. So I'm like freaking out at school, just like walking around the hallway thinking like, that's it, my life's over, you know, I'm gonna be in like childcare development, like I'm done. Okay, like I'm done, dude. Like I didn't know what to think. But then I remember as we were walking around, I saw the girl, my friends with benefits, and me and her, we would never really like actually like talk together at school because we didn't want people like putting a connection together that me and her were like talking or anything. Because, you know, obviously we were only friends with benefits. That would mean like if we really want to move on and date someone else, we could. But then I remember she decided to run up to me as she saw me at school in the hallway, and she ran up to me saying, Baba, like I need to talk to you like now. Okay, is what I said. And then I remember me and her, we ended up going to another room, which was our science classroom that no one was in at the time because science, you know, wasn't on yet. And basically I remember she looked at me and she held her stomach saying, Baba, I'm pregnant. Wait, what is what I said? I was like, are you kidding me? Out of the 5%, you got pregnant? Like I remember I was freaking out and I was just panicking back to back to back. I didn't know what to think. So I remember literally that day right after school, I remember me and her, we got into a car and we went to a clinic and we talked about it through and stuff. And literally, apparently I have like no say in what happens to that kid, is what the doctor told me. So she kept telling me over and over, oh, like it's not your choice, it's the mother's choice. But like it's my little swimmers is what I told her, but she didn't care. She didn't care at all what I have to say. So I remember as that was going on, I remember I looked at her and said, okay, listen, I understand it's her choice and her body. I understand. But at the same time, you gotta understand, I am too young for this. I basically gave her like the speech of, hey, I'm a high schooler. Understand that. And she kept telling me how like it's very common for high schoolers to have this issue and stuff. And honestly, to this day, it freaked me out. But then I remember she ended up making the choice that she didn't want to have a kid. And you guys know what happens the rest. I'm not going to say because obviously there's a lot of people with different opinions when it comes to the word abortion. But at the same time, life heads in many directions. And some people don't get to have and enjoy the life that we want. I don't know. There's no reason. But at the end of the day, it was one of the biggest scares of my life. And to this day, all I'm going to tell you guys watching this video is always be careful because you never know what's going to happen. There was more to the story, but honestly, that's a story for another time because obviously, you know, telling our parents what ended up happening was not easy, but that's a story for another day. Anyways, guys, follow for more embarrassing but crazy stories. Peace out, guys.